Hi, everyone. Welcome to NJGAAE Presents. Today, we're doing a little bit of a different format because we're pre recording, which is totally cool. So, there won't be any comments, but you can comment um, in the comments. We won't see them then, but I'll see them later. And if there's anything of note, I will give it to Daniel later. So, I'm going to pass it over to him to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Silverstein. I am the manager of on-site programs at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center in Newark, New Jersey. I've been there since 2017, and I have been working with the Governor's Arts team and and ArtsEd New Jersey since I started working at NJPAC in 2017. And it's been a really exciting couple of years
Mhm.
working with the organization and and working on this really incredible ceremony. And thankfully, I was able to attend a live event, for my first 2 years working at NJPAC, and it was just extraordinary. And so I'm really excited to be here and to just talk arts and arts education.
I'm super excited for next year's event because I've only worked here when we were doing virtual ceremonies because I've been doing it for a year now. So I was the one before and then this year. And so I'm excited for next year because I'll probably still be working with the organization and then I can help run the red carpet and everything. And that'd be so exciting.
Yeah, it's really it's 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 hard to describe in words. It's one of those things where when the event starts, like, and you're actually in it, is when it's just like the magic really happens. It's like with anything. You coordinate, manage all the pre-production,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know what's going to happen until the day of. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's really another thing. And it's live, so
Mm-hmm.
you have people screaming,
Either you're ready or you're
joy.
not.
Right, you're either ready or not. And you have like parents just like loving it, and family and friends, and the students and teachers and everybody who wins awards. Everybody's ready. It's a really incredible experience. And the hall is just spectacular. It's gorgeous.
Wow. Yeah, I'm really excited. I haven't been to like a live event like that in so long. I have a live event tonight though, because
Oh, really?
our my thespian it's my last thespian induction for my troupe, and so it'll be emotional, but then it'll also be super exciting because it'll be our first live event in over a year. So
Yeah.
but I want to get into a couple of things. So there's a couple of routes that I'd like to talk about. So one of them is I kind of want to talk about your background with arts education and then what that like how that in like possibly led to your wanting to be a part of arts education. And then also I want to know about what your job encompasses because I don't know, it's interesting being a head of a part of an organization. So
Yeah.
whichever one you want to talk about first.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'll start with my background in arts education. And I guess it goes all the way back to just my starting out, my arts just training.
Mm,
Um, so my dad is a drummer,
mm,
and he kind of introduced me to drums and to jazz at an early age.
mm,
And I started, learning drums from him and got really, really into it. And so my background is music. Should have started with that. My background is music, and I'm a drummer. And my dad was a drummer, so he taught me how to play.
mm,
And then I started taking lessons, and I fell in love. As soon as I heard jazz for the first time, I fell in
mm,
love. And I listened to Dave Brubeck's Take Five, and I was hooked. And I started learning from him, and then I started taking lessons. And I just got really, I really connected with music. And it was my voice. I was a pretty shy kid, and I wasn't I wasn't like the best student academically. It wasn't like my focus. So so music and the arts were really important to me. And I did some painting, and
Hmm.
I did a little bit of dance too. Like
Oh.
my yeah, I mean, my mom took me to everything. She wanted me to get like the experiences and everything. So I took some dance classes. Wasn't my favorite. Uh,
Hmm.
um, and I think it was mostly because I had to wear the leotard. Maybe I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think dancing was really my. I love doing it. Like I love dancing, but I don't think it was something I really gravitated towards.
I
But
did
anyway.
dancing for 6 years.
Oh
If you
wow.
guys can, if any of you, like, you guys have known me now for a year, like, if any of you can believe it, I did dancing for 6 years, and it was mainly because my grandmother and my mother, they did dancing and they really loved it, and I did not. I
Yeah.
am more of a, I'm like, I like dressing up for these streams because it's just kind of universal. Like, I get to do a little bit of makeup and I get to put on a pretty dress or a pretty shirt or whatever. But as far as like costumes go and like filming myself and like performing in that way is just so I've gotten increasingly not uncomfortable with it, just increasingly understanding that it's not really what I want to do all the time. And I learned that officially then, and then I learned it again in sophomore year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just yeah, it definitely is it's something that, like, you either you try it out and you either like
Hmm.
it or you don't. I mean, sometimes, you might not like it at first, and then you get into it, and you might end up loving it. But for me, yeah, it wasn't I mean, I love dance.
Yeah.
My mom loves ballet, and
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of modern dance performances and things like that. So I'm really a fan, but wasn't something I wanted to do. But anyway, so yeah, so I just I started studying music, and actually, I it's funny because and I tell people this all the time, when we do like introductions at staff meetings and things like that, or when I'm meeting new people. Fun fact about me is I am actually an alumni of the Jazz for Teens program that we run at Wells Fargo. Jazz for Teens program that we
Wow.
run at NJPAC. I'm an alumni of that program. I actually that was kind of my first really introduction to NJPAC, was through that. And I did that in high school. I actually
Mm.
I did that in uh, my junior and senior year of high school, and it was actually it was a way of part of a way of excuse of getting out of marching band, because I didn't want to be in marching band anymore. So it was like, well, I can't actually commit to Saturdays anymore because I'm going to Jazz for Teens. So sorry.
Um,
And so, but I wanted to play the drum set anyway.
mhm.
So yeah, so at my early experiences of being an NJPAC, is that. And then and then I actually went to school for music. I went to Rutgers, Mason Gross School of the Arts. And then after school I freelanced for a bit,
Mm.
and then I started teaching private lessons, and actually started teaching at Rutgers, and it led me to an administrative job, working as a program coordinator in their community arts school, and that led me to my current job. And I just the arts and and arts education, it's really important to me. I mean, I certainly, especially at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, I really got an education, and in the styles of jazz. And I really learned a lot playing with with other people, and just the experience of making art with other people, and creating, more so than just do it. I mean, I used to just play at home,
Mm.
and it was I played to records, and
Mm.
I was really looking for experiences, and places to play and to connect and to create, and I had it in school, but it's just, I mean, with school you only have such a limited amount of time to really, to be
In the zone.
in the zone,
Yeah.
right? And and just um but just the fact that I had,
Opportunity, yeah.
opportunity to just to play music and with other people, even in school, was really important.
Mm,
And I when I started working for Rutgers, and then I started working for NJPAC, I wanted students to be able to have every student to be able to have the same opportunities that I had
mhm,
and the same experiences of creating and expressing
mm.
through art, in any possible way, and also not feeling that they need to hold back or feel that they're kind of you know s- um uh, uh not,
That there's
not,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. That's something that Arts and J is doing where like we're very, very serious. Like we are, but it's just like a funny way of describing it. You
Yeah.
know, like but we're very serious about that we need every school to have the same opportunities. So we want a school in Southampton to I don't know if that's in New Jersey, I realize now after I said it. um
I know it sounds like it might be.
yeah, okay, whatever. But we want a school in Cape May to have the same opportunities as a school in Montclair. You know, like we want them to have a dance program. We want them to have all of the disciplines. And we want them to have opportunities like this, like the Governor's Award, like NJPAC, like NJ Thespians, like NJDFL, all of these things so that the students have the opportunity to really engage with art. And like you mentioned before, how like dance didn't click with you, jazz jazz does, you know, and like even marching band didn't click with you,
Yeah.
but jazz and drums that fits with you.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have discovered that. You maybe probably would have discovered it later, but you wouldn't have discovered it so soon if you didn't have those opportunities in high school. And it's just such an important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny because you know um I remember, like, my mom, was looking for, programs, jazz programs for me,
Mm,
to join. And I think I actually I had a memory. I do have a memory of, like, I remember, she, had a hard time finding, a program for me in our area. I think she had mentioned, oh yeah, there was a jazz program in New Brunswick. So I live in Edison, New Jersey, Central
mm,
Jersey. And she said, "Oh, there's a jazz program in New Brunswick," and I was super super excited because I just I didn't heard of any like jazz centric programs, that I'd be able to just to develop my art. Um, and for some reason, I don't know, it didn't work out, or I'm I'm not sure if it was maybe that, like, there were only as like the program was only for a limited time, or I'm not really sure. But then when she found NJ Pack's Jazz for Teens program, and it was a game
mm,
changer. But at the time, I remember there weren't that many programs in my area that specifically had jazz.
mhm.
um and I mean, and I
Because it's a hard thing to teach.
it is.
It's similar to, in a way, I guess, to editing, where you can't necessarily teach feeling it, and that's a hard thing. Like there's a lot of art which is like you can't necessarily teach the feeling of it, but you can teach the principles of it. And there's principles
Absolutely.
of everything, and especially there's principles of jazz. um but it's interesting that that is especially in art, which like you need to be able to feel it, and you need to have that communication with your group, or with inside yourself, to have that dynamic, and that's something that's hard to teach, near to impossible.
Absolutely. And absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's really about, I mean, you can have the fundamentals, and
Mhm,
you can have the tools, but
mhm,
the most important tool that you're going to have is your ear. you know
mhm,
that's that, and um I mean, it's just and being able to listen to the other players and react to the other players, and see what's going on around you, especially in an art form where there's a lot of on the spot improvisation,
mhm,
where you have to react to what's going on around you, support the other musicians, like,
mhm,
on the spot. And it's something, yeah, it's something that can't be taught. You have to just do it, and you have to play with other musicians and be around other
mhm,
musicians. um and and that's why arts programs are so important. I mean, specifically for music, my background, um, just like I said, having the opportunities to play with other people and learn from other people, because you're also going to learn a lot from just being on the bandstand and playing with other musicians. I mean, it's like a conversation. You learn more through having other conversations. It's like learning a language. I mean, it I mean, it is a language. It's the musical
Yeah,
language,
of course.
it's like the same principles as like learning a
Hmm.
language. You can learn all the fundamentals of that language and learn
Hmm.
the how to speak it, but you need to be able to actually like
Feel
have
it.
the opportunity to speak with somebody else.
That's true, and also you have to have the knack for it. Like I think anyone can really learn a language, but some people will be much better at it. So like
Right.
similarly, music and languages are very hard for me. Languages not as much, but music for me, I am bewildered by that someone can just do it casually. Like I um I am a filmmaker
Hmm.
and I am a writer and then I know how to use music in like the backgrounds of poems or in my films, but I have no idea how to produce it. And I think there's a sort of like I think there's such value to that being a talent that someone else is so passionate about because I can work with them and they can work with me because you have one thing which you love and then I have the one thing which I really love and then if we work together then it'll be such a great product because there'll be so much love on all sides of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which I really love and that comes back to the collaboration aspect and that's something that I didn't necessarily respect when I was younger. Like I got very independent as I've always been rather independent, but I got super independent like when I first learned about filmmaking because there was nobody else really around me
Hmm.
who really liked filmmaking and had been practicing it and then I found some people and I also I don't know got a little less narcissistic I guess and I really engaged with that I need collaborators. I need other people to make my stories come to life and for me to make their stories come to life.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's funny you said that, it's like going from being a, big fish in a small pond, you know, that I know it's a tired metaphor, but, being a
No.
big fish in a small pond to a small, fish in a big pond.
Yeah.
I felt that
I
way
was
too. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I was like the weird fish in like the pond. And then I was like, I'm just so different. Like I love filmmaking. And I was like,
Yeah.
here, like I've been making films. And then I kind of like realized like that's kind of a ridiculous thing to think because they have just as much artistic merit if they're doing something which I just chose not to do.
Right.
And it's not necessarily that I chose it. I just didn't click with it, but they're clicking with it. And that's so valuable and beautiful. And that's just something to love and look at.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk more about jazz, and then there's a couple other things like I've made some notes here, but I want to talk about. Am I getting a call? Okay. Anyway, so I want to talk about jazz. What is your favorite type of jazz? Is it just general jazz? Because my favorite type is big band jazz. I don't know what the actual term for it is, but that's my term for it. So, like louder things, like I don't know if you saw Whiplash, but that sort of music.
Hmm.
Um, and then I appreciate the smaller band jazz, but that's like my favorite just because it feels like a chorus.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's referred to a couple of different ways. I mean, you could, big band jazz or swing. Um,
Mm,
I mean, it's funny. I jazz has become like this thing today, where, it's hard. Jazz is absorbed so many other styles of music,
mm,
especially you see that a lot today. I've seen jazz musicians kind of enter the realm of like folk music, or
mm,
or their background is in folk music, or they're inspired by it, and so their music sounds very folk oriented, or some musicians come from a more of a rock background,
mm,
so some of their music is instrumental, but it's an improvisational, but it's very It's they're using electric guitars, and it's very very heavy,
Mhm.
and the drummers are playing possibly bigger kits, and so it just everything sounds more of a has that kind of rock aesthetic to it.
Mhm.
um so what's interesting is that, so I was talking to somebody about this, and I kind of said, like, because I was thinking about like the type of music I would love to play. I said I
Mhm.
love playing jazz, but then I started thinking, like, there's so many genres
Of
um,
jazz.
of jazz. It's like,
Yeah.
so I kind of started saying, like, I love playing improvisational music.
Oh.
Um, and I think that's kind of where I gravitate towards. I mean, I love, I'm a huge fan of, like, the late 50s, early 60s, kind of got into the modal jazz, with like Miles Davis and
Mhm.
John Coltrane, and you had two, like, kind of those powerhouse groups that they had, and I really gravitated towards that type of music. It's very, it was almost kind of like free, but there's still structure, but they weren't as much in the confines of the chordal structure. They kind of just kind of
Mhm.
went with it, and uh, and that type of music really spoke to me. And but then, I listen to all types of music, but what I really gravitate towards, when it comes to jazz, is just the improvisational aspect of it.
Mhm.
And I love just sitting at the kit, and just
Mhm.
making sounds, and just improvising on the spot. And I listen
I'm
to a
feeling
lot.
it.
What?
I'm feeling it.
Yeah, yeah, and just feeling
Yeah.
it, just listening to a piece of music and creating, just s- s- just creating something out of nothing, or or even if you have a structure, just kind of making things up, creating on the spot. And I think, so I guess, to answer your question, I I I guess I would say, I would say, like, 60s, jazz really is my favorite, but I also love modern jazz, that's
Mm.
kind of encompasses a lot of different genres.
Mm.
Um, I guess, yeah, I would say that. And but then there's also the other kind of, like, I think I just love improvisational music. So
Yeah.
anything that I love a lot. I mean, I'm also a sponge when it comes to music. I
Mm.
will listen to anything. So, if it has an improvisational element to it, or it's instrumental, I really will gravitate towards it.
Mm. That's awesome. I wanted to talk about a couple of things. I have so many notes here. And I really appreciate that you're like, oh, I love all music, but like here's the one that like I gravitate towards the most, because that's the way to describe it for me. Like I like a lot of different types of music, but what I end up gravitating towards the most is music that is essentially just like a poem with like a beat in the back, which isn't like it's not like a rap, but like like indie music. So like Sufjan Stevens and that sort of thing is like more my vibe, but like I'll listen to anything, and I think that's an interesting way of describing it, is like what you gravitate towards. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that phrasing. So I want to talk about like um so you like I want your opinion on how people joke about like that they don't like jazz. Like I want your, because I know that's like a joke, and I want your thoughts on it as a person who appreciates the art and loves jazz. Like I don't know, make your case. Because I'm you'd be preaching to the choir because I really appreciate jazz, but
Yeah, I think what people kind of say, like, oh, I don't really, I really don't, I don't really like jazz, or when people make fun of it, or whatever. I think that I'm trying to see how I can phrase it. Um,
it's a hard question. I'm sorry. I just
no, no,
I'm
no, no.
so curious because this is what I really want to talk about on a stream. Is like I talk to a person and then they tell me like this thing which they love, and it's a big part of them, and then I want to discuss that with them because it's rare that you get the opportunity to discuss in detail about this thing which you're passionate about in this way.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. No, it's no, it's a great question. I'm just trying to think how to. because it's funny. I've thought about it,
Mm,
and I think it's kind of like it's sort. I kind of attribute it to. I know this might sound weird, but I kind of could kind of attribute it to, because I'm also like a pop culture fan, and there's a lot of like I love fandoms, like I love
mhm.
Star Wars, and I love I'm a big comic book person, and I I gravitate towards those things, and I there's and like, and it's funny, I was listening to a podcast about kind of
Oh,
like fandoms, about like kind of how they become sort of you know like tribal in a way, where it's like you have these like kind of groups of people who kind of gravitate towards it, but it's like when
mhm.
other people kind of try to join or get into it, you're like, no, 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 you can't come in, like
And then
this is
also,
exclusive.
um, the that also brings up the idea that I love podcasts. I highly recommend Imaginary Worlds with Eric Malinsky. I don't know if you've listened to
I'm not
that.
familiar with it. No,
Mwah, excellent. I love it. It's so good. If you want to check it out, Imaginary Worlds.
I'll check it out.
He's super calming too. But this is I also watch a lot of video essays, and there's this guy who makes video essays called Big Joel, and he talks about Shrek, which is it's getting there. It's getting to the point. But
Yeah,
he talks about that for Shrek to be a deviant, there has to be the opposite of deviance. So inherently, when there is a world which creates roles, being deviant is a role. So there's the group, and then there's the outside group. So when it comes with liking something and then disliking something, they are connected intrinsically, which
yeah,
is something I think people forget. And so if you say you don't like this thing and then you're in a certain group, if you legitimately don't like it because you don't like the way it sounds, or you don't like it because you're part of a joke group essentially, because that's what I'm talking about, not the if you guys don't like jazz, like that's cool, you don't need to
yeah,
like it, but it's
absolutely.
it's that the level of jokingly against it, and that's just an interesting note about the levels of disliking essentially.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like it. Yeah, I guess like what I was saying before was
Hmm.
I think also there's kind of some truth behind that, though, like jokingly even, like, because I think
Hmm.
it's a very specific art form,
Yes.
and you know um there's it's funny that the jazz world is a very small world, despite
Mm.
being like like just celebrated all over the world. I mean, it's the it is a very small world, and you're going to know a lot of people, and like that you might and you could just see it like on Facebook, if you're a musician, and like you might see another musician on there who you've never met before, but you have like 50 mutual friends.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a very small world. So, and I think what sometimes happens is, for sometimes when somebody tries to kind of come in, and this happens sometimes at jam sessions, when somebody who's not kind of part of that, or somebody new, or somebody who hasn't
Hmm.
really learned yet, sometimes certain musicians can get a little bit, you know um it uh, I don't want to defensive,
Yeah,
um
but yeah,
and
I know what you mean.
and can kind of feel like, who's this person, like, why are they coming here, or like, if they're not at the same level,
Hmm.
um it can end up becoming
A little toxic,
a little, yeah,
to
yeah,
use a term that's pretty
yeah,
sensationalized right now, but
it
yeah,
is.
that
And yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I absolutely, it's and I think that kind of it can, and I'm not saying it's it's everywhere, um but like it can breed, and but I was saying before, it can kind of like, you can see that in other, in other places too, where like in a lot of fandoms, it's like, well, if something changes, or if somebody comes in that's new, it's
Mhm.
like, and it doesn't, and it's not necessarily the status, it kind of shifts the status quo. People are like, whoa, whoa, I don't like this, or and they're especially when you come from like you're in like kind of like a small group, a
Mhm.
knit group, um, and it's a type of music that's very intimate, and there's a lot of connections, and there's
Mhm.
improvisation, and it's like it can sometimes, if somebody comes in and they want to play, it's like, and they aren't at the same level, they can kind of be shunned, and can be
Mhm.
kind of like be like, come back next week, or like, don't come back. And I think that kind of perception can lead to people being like, I don't like this music, because a lot of the people who are a part of it are not very open.
Mhm. Which is interesting for such an open art form.
Yeah.
Like improv jazz is such an open art form because you are laying yourself out there going, I'm just going to play music and whatever feels right for me, which is such an intimate thing to do. And something when it really clicked that I really enjoyed jazz was because I love communication. I love that
Yeah.
interaction, and I watched, I don't know what I watched. I don't remember what it was, but I was watching the communication of it was in a movie, so it was like that's not necessarily what I should have been watching, but I just was caught up in it because the communication with the jazz artists during this, and they were just going, and it was just so beautiful. And I think that's something also to take note of, is that since improv is one scary and also like rather intimate because you have to just engage with it, and put yourself out there, that it's hard to get on the flow with another new person.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely, absolutely. It can be very scary, because it's like, I you know it's like if somebody's trying to learn language and they try to start speaking it with somebody
Mhm.
who's fluent in it. it,
Mhm.
it can be very intimidating, because
Mhm.
you're trying to have a conversation with somebody, and if you're not comfortable, and they are, like, it can, especially if you mess up, it can be, if you can you can feel very self-conscious about it.
Mhm.
And because it's a very intimate, and there's, it's get I mean, it's like getting to know, it's getting to know somebody, through
Mhm.
music, and conversing through music.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a very intimate art form that requires, um it requires trust, and it requires you to kind of, you know have a conversation with, because it's not, it's like, there's music that's written out, but, you know when you're just going on the bandstand, and you got like a lead sheet,
Mhm.
and you're going to a jam session, like, you kind of have to, it's not going to have everything written out for you.
Mhm.
You're going to, what you're playing is based off of, I mean, unless you're like playing the melody of the song, or you're playing the chords on the piano, the harmonies. um but it's not telling you what to do, it's just giving you a framework, and then you
Mhm.
kind of have to then kind of speaking, and through your horn, or through through the
Mhm.
drums. um
It's
and it,
like singing a song you don't have lyrics to.
yeah,
Like the
exactly.
music's in the background, and then you have to just figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah, and it can be very, very, very intimidating.
Mm.
And it is a very intimate thing, and it can be scary, and for a lot of people who try to get into it, it can be daunting, because you're like, "Oh, I don't am I there yet, or am I ready,
Mhm.
or, am I gonna mess up, and you will, you know.
There's a line from the movie Prince of Egypt, which is one of my favorite movies. I've mentioned it before on the stream, but there's a line where, although you may never know all the steps, you must learn to join the dance.
Mm,
And I feel like that really applies here because that's what it is. You need you need to find people which you can groove with, because and that will be understanding if you trip, will be understanding, because if you don't, then it's gonna prevent you from dancing or playing jazz in the future, because it'll be scary, and it'll be increasingly scary.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's such an interesting. I love that. I'm gonna have to. I probably won't remember it right now, because I'm just like,
Mhm.
I'm not in that headspace. But I
Mhm.
definitely, I love that quote. I'm gonna definitely look that up and try to
It's
memorize it. It's great.
It's in a song called Heaven's Eyes, and the whole song is about I friggin' love that song. That's I oh mwah, it's so good. But I Jethro, who is the high priest, no, not high priest, or he's the leader of a tribe, and
Yeah.
so when Moses comes, because that's it's a biblical movie, but it's made by DreamWorks. The 2000s was really different, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was.
But when he comes, he does this whole song about how you are one piece of the world. So a couple other lines from it are a single thread in a tapestry, though its color brightly shine, does it think it's more important than the pattern of the grand design?
Mm,
And there's many lines like that where it's basically saying like you don't know what other people's lives are, and you can only look at your life through the grand picture, because if you just look at your life through your own eyes, then it's going to be shoddy. It's going to be a bad view
mm,
of it. And so that idea that you need to just get into it and engage with it, because if you engage with the dance in a proverbial sense, then you engage with the entire world, and you engage with a higher form of life essentially.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's that yeah, I love that. And just one other thing I wanted to say about
Yes, absolutely.
about this, is it's funny. I remember I was having a conversation with a friend of mine in college about just about music, and um and he gave me really good advice about, like, when you're going on a bandstand, you're, playing with people for the first time, you've never met them before,
Yes.
whatever. It's a daunting experience, and it's like going to talk to somebody you've never met before, and or asking them
Mhm.
questions, uh, that can be, I don't know, that or it's like sometimes it's kind of, I attribute it, it's like sort of like talking to a celebrity. It's like you're going up
Mhm.
there, you're taking a risk, and it's like you
And
don't know
it's
what you're gonna
asking like
say.
really serious questions too. Like
Right.
it's not like, oh, like how's your day going? It's like, what is your purpose in the world? You know,
Right.
and it's asking that, but in a music sense.
Right. Right. Exactly. And so, what he said to me is like, like you get to know people personally, like, I mean, if they want you to. Sometimes people are, are less interested in that, but like, have dinner with people. Like if you're in a band, like go out to dinner with them, like have conversations that have nothing to do with music,
Mhm.
get to know them personally. I think it's really important to, when you're and sometimes you can't afford, you don't have the opportunity to do that, because sometimes you're in situations, and I've been in these many times, where you get called last minute and you got to go and
Mhm.
just play, and you don't
Mhm.
have that opportunity to get to know somebody. And for a lot of times, like, a lot of gigs, I'm playing with different band members. It's not like I'm playing with one band, but
Mhm.
any opportunity that you get to, like, get to know people, talk to people, like try, just have conversation with them,
Mhm.
because it's really going to strengthen that musical bond and that musical trust, I think, and
Mhm.
it'll open you up more. And sometimes it's hard to even do that,
Mhm.
and for somebody, for anyone who might be a little bit more, um, a little bit shyer, and might be
Mhm.
a little more timid, and maybe not just comfortable doing that. And I know sometimes it happens where the music is where where you speak. Um, you know, try to do it. If you can. It's, I feel like you'd be surprised. I mean, sometimes, like, having just a quick conversation just about the weather or something. I don't know, just something even just as banal as that, like
Mhm.
it can start a dialogue, and then you get to know the person a little bit, or and then, it, to me, it makes me more comfortable. It's than going on the bandstand, because I've
Mhm.
kind of, I've developed a little bit more of a
Of a
bond,
rapport, yeah.
rapport, and it really translates into the music, having
I
that
can
rapport,
imagine.
with somebody, it really, really does. And I think it really kind of solidifies and can really strengthen that music.
Yeah, absolutely. So that reminds me of, I have a question right here which just says jazz recording.
Hmm.
So how does it work with bigger bands, or not bigger necessarily with like larger in size, but in uh fame, I guess, or something. I don't know. Oh, you know what I mean? Like bands which have to do recordings so their music gets out, and that's general bands, I imagine, as well. But
Mhm.
how does that vibe? How does that work? Is it just like that one performance which exists in that one time? That's the one which gets recorded.
Um, it's funny. Yeah, I mean, for when you're going into the recording session and you've never done it before,
Mhm.
it's kind of like when you go on a bandstand and you perform, live. There's a lot of it's going to be performed on the spot. I mean, you play the melodies and you play like the p you play the part that's written, but then there's the improvisational aspect.
Mhm.
So then you're kind of just like just improvising on the spot. You're playing on the spot. And I think sometimes when musicians go into the recording studio, they think, oh
Mhm.
my god, what happens if I like mess up, because like I only get one take to do it right. But a lot of times, you know like you might record something, and technology's gotten better. A lot of times you'll record you know the melody of a piece, and then you'll record the solos. And there'll be one thing that's wrong. And then sometimes with the musicians, or the recording, the producer or whoever's recording it, the engineer will do is they'll go back to that section, and then musicians will like just record over that. And
Mm.
they can just you know they can copy and paste and move parts, and
That's why we have sound. This is why we have sound mixers and sound producers. Like,
right, exactly. You can make it work. I mean,
yeah.
it would be it's better to be able to have, you know like just the most natural recording, where it's like this is like what's recorded in the moment. But it happens all the time, like where musicians will like they'll go back and they'll overdub their
Mhm.
part. um so it's not always that
Always
like you have to
seamless.
seamless. Now, I mean, it also, the other thing too is like when you're going into recording, and this is not just for jazz, but for just in general, like recording. I mean, time is
Mhm.
money.
Mhm.
And you know you have to go in a lot of times. Unfortunately, you have to go in and just like you're like, okay, you got like 2 hours to record, and you got to just or we got, not 2 hours. 2 hours is too short. But although sometimes I guess it could be 2 hours. It depends on
And
on
the
the
piece.
recording, on the
Yeah.
pace, or the recording. But like, you'll be like, okay, here are the charts. Like you've never seen them before. Sometimes you might just go in and just read the charts on the spot, and you have like a couple
Mhm.
of hours to record everything. Like you got to do it like immediately, and get it right immediately. Sometimes that happens, and that can be stressful. But you know. A lot of times, again, they can just, if you mess up something, they can go back in and re-record it. It's not like a big
Mhm.
deal. But generally, you should, when you're going into recording, it's, you should like just try to do your best, that you can, and record everything. Like ideally, it would be that you just record everything,
Mhm.
and then you don't have to go back and overdub, or do another
Mhm.
part. But it happens, and even
Mhm.
in jazz, it happens, and it can happen. Um, I've had a couple experiences where like I've recorded like my own part,
Mhm.
and then the other musicians were overdubbed, which wasn't the best, because like I would play with I play with the rhythm section, but then there'd be
Mhm.
no soloist. So it's like
Mhm.
I don't have anything to
To bounce against.
bounce against, right?
Yeah.
So I've been in those situations too, and those are not ideal. So,
Mm.
when I'm in smaller groups, the best thing is just to, you know, record record what's played and what's improvised.
Mhm.
And then you can go back in and tweak it a little bit. But generally, in jazz, it's more like it's better uh to just you know play on the spot, and just, yeah,
Hope for the
and
best.
yeah.
So there's two different things that I'd like to talk about. So, I kind of want to talk about media representation of jazz because I've seen a couple movies which have like La La Land, Whiplash, Soul.
Sure.
And I kind of want your kind of thoughts on them, and then in the ones which you've seen, and you'll probably mention movies which I haven't seen. And then I want to talk about your first time doing improv jazz
Sure.
with other people. So which one? I'm just I'm giving you a two-way path. Pick which one you want to go with.
I guess I could start with the movies
Okay.
question, media representation.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's funny. When I saw Whiplash, it was hard to watch. It really was. I mean, I connected it immediately because I'm a drummer, and
Yeah.
I've been in a lot of those experiences, but not to that extent. Um,
Totally.
and I know a lot of people have a lot of issues with that movie because it doesn't like. I mean, I didn't go to college, and I didn't go to competitions. I wasn't
Mhm.
there to compete. And uh, I mean, I'm sure there are teachers like him out there,
Mhm.
but I mean, and just some of like the performances in you're listening to, and you're like, they would never, they would never get into
Yeah.
college. And the way it's kind of represented is more fantastical. It's not as
Yeah.
it's not really what goes on.
Yeah.
Again, some of the elements definitely occur, like some like
Mhm.
that, just I mean, like just the pressure can
Mhm.
really there can be a lot of pressure there,
Mhm.
just in performing and being the best that you can. um
Something also to note, so those who haven't seen it, it's both of the La La Land and Whiplash are a Damien Chazelle film. You probably, in a general sense, the general proverbial you have seen La La Land because it was a bit of a not a controversial film, but when it came out um, for the Oscars, it was not the winner of the award, but it was a switcheroo because it was confusing to read
oh yeah,
things apparently. But
I remember that.
yeah, but Damien Chazelle, he makes a lot of jazz movies, and then Soul is also probably one that you guys have seen because it is a recent film, and then it is also a Pixar film. So I have yet to really meet anyone who is like, yeah, I don't like Pixar. Like,
Yeah, neither do I. Generally, if you've seen a Pixar movie, like, I mean, yeah, I really, it's really hard to hate them. It really
yeah,
is. It
yeah,
really is. You can't, unless you like, you just, I don't know, hate the world or something. Like, I don't know. It's really hard to.
But something I wanted to note about Whiplash, it's interesting that it's not super accurate because I assumed it wouldn't be. But there's two notes. One, that when you're a music performer, people forget that you are also essentially an athlete, especially for drums
Oh
and
yeah,
for heavier instruments, and for just you have to move your fingers so fast, you have to move your arms so fast, and then drums you have to just really get into it, and you need to have that strength, which is an interesting note. And then also, my favorite scene from Whiplash is the scene where he's talking to the girl in the pizza restaurant. I love the way it's shot, but then
oh
also
yeah,
the relatability of it. Because I've talked to so many people who didn't know what they wanted to do in the future, and both you and I we found what we wanted to do in high school, essentially. And so we've known for a while, not necessarily distinctly what we wanted exactly, like
yeah,
this is when I'm going to do it, but we found what we wanted to do in a general sense. And so we've known what we wanted for a while. And that scene is so interesting because that's the one which really, really clicked with me.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of those scenes really did click with me. And
Mhm.
I think I, I think what a lot of the controversy from what I've read, and just seeing
Mhm.
it, like, I think just the representation of the music itself
Mm.
is not accurate. But
Which is
like,
weird being a movie about music.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a little bit of a
Yeah.
fantastical story in the sense of, like, this stuff like that. There's a lot
Mhm.
of elements of it that don't happen in,
Mm.
in school.
Mhm.
But I think, but I also look at it as, like, it's more than that.
Mhm.
I think that the jazz part is really is the set piece.
Mhm.
but I think the story itself is more about that. Like it's about
Determination, I'd say.
exactly, and it's
Yeah.
about right, and it's about a a
Determination and passion, which
passion. Yeah,
that seems to be what a lot of jazz movies are about, from what I've seen, is passion.
yeah,
Which, if you want to like elaborate on that, that'd be super interesting because that is a. I'm realizing now, like that is a very prominent theme because it's even by different people. It's passion.
yeah. Well, I mean, jazz is a very passionate art form. I mean,
Mhm.
it's very intimate, and
Mhm.
those words I think are it's like when you think of those words kind of go together, and
Mhm.
but yes, there's a lot of passion because you're in the music you're pouring yourself into it.
Mhm.
It's not like you're playing somebody else's music. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, you are. You do play other. I mean, you do, but the difference is like with classical music
Mhm.
is that you're playing classical music. You're reading everything is written out unless it's something that's like it calls for improvisation. You're
Mhm.
reading everything out and you're being dictated by a conductor, and it's you're I mean classical music is beautiful. I love it, and
Oh
I
yeah, I'm
still
not.
think, and not saying that
Well,
there's
this
no
is similar. I completely understand where you're going with this because I feel this. I feel a similar way with acting, where I think it's amazing, and I think it's really fascinating that people can have control over their emotions in that way. Um, but I do find like this was one of the things which really flicked me over to being more of a producer of content instead of a an actor in it. Like so I write and that sort of thing because I wanted to say my own words um because I wanted that authenticity in a different way than other people who are in these other art forms. And it's just interesting because I completely understand what you're talking about. And no offense to, you know, other art forms. It's not about the offense. It's not about them versus us. It's about just what we prefer and the different dynamics.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah, and I think going back to the whole passion thing is I mean, I think in art, in art, in any art form, you're pouring yourself out there regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in something like music and jazz, there's another layer to that because there's that improvisational aspect to it, and you're speaking your own voice, and
Mm-hmm.
you and you're you're it's it because all the music is very organic, and it's always going to sound different. It's
Mm-hmm.
always going to sound different. That you're it's just you're pouring yourself into it, and if when you're playing, you're in it, you're in a moment, and it does something to you, and I think and that intimacy really drives a lot of people, and then
Mm-hmm.
the just creating with other people and playing off of other people and feeding off of other people. um it's just there's it becomes like this very um it comes almost like an aphrodisiac. It's just you get just like you go to another place, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that
This is yeah, this is an idea explored in Soul. I don't know. We don't need to talk extensively about it if you haven't seen that film,
I
but
have I love it.
oh, okay. So this is an idea explored in Soul, and I think it's very well depicted that you go to a different place when you're in the flow. You know, like sometimes when I'm writing poems or when I'm writing my scripts, especially when I'm directing, you go into a flow. And it's such a valuable thing. And this is a whole we could keep on talking about
Oh
this
yeah,
forever because this also goes into the value of art because if you don't have that opportunity to create in that way if students don't have the opportunity to create in that way then they may never feel that way and then there's some people who don't have it, they don't feel that way about art but they feel that way I don't know about like taxes or something I don't know there's a bunch of people which feel very different there's cooking that's something that I've seen people feel that way about and I know that athletics are like that too and it's just giving the options because that is such a valuable way of feeling
absolutely.
yeah
um and yeah, and then to I guess I know we're what time are we going till 4?
Oh yeah, so we're
Okay.
so we're pre-filming. So we're doing from like 3 to 4 on one of the earlier days in the week,
Oh yeah.
and so yeah, we're gonna be closing down soon. And I have one last question, but if you want to talk a little bit about what you were about to say, that's totally fine.
Oh no, I was just going to answer your other question
Oh yeah.
quickly, just about my first experience playing with
Mhm.
other musicians, and it was I did play with other musicians in school,
Mhm.
but
It's not
in
the
public
same.
school, but it's not the same. The
Mhm.
first time I played with musicians, I mean, I was at Jazz for Teens, and I remember this memory. You
Mm.
know, I remember it was like I was going down to like the basement of our building, to do like we were having like uh, just we were having auditions, like ensemble placement auditions. And I
Ooh,
remember
sweet.
sitting, yeah, it was the first day. I mean, I already been in the program, like I got
Oh,
in the
okay.
program, but it was just we
They
were
were
just
trying to figure out where you needed to be.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I sat down, and there was a bass player on the right of me, and as soon as we started like the song, like it was an incredible experience, because before that I'd always played to records with a bass player,
Yeah.
and just hearing the actual bass next
A
to me,
real
the
base.
real
Yeah.
bass, and just my cymbal sonically, just like listening to that bass with my cymbal and the way I was playing, it just was like I was it. I fell in love immediately.
Mm.
It was like love at first sight. It was just
Oh.
I've never had that experience before or since. Just in that, I mean, maybe now because we've been inside for a whole year, I think those experiences I'll probably have those again, because just
Mhm.
it's I've been kind of, I haven't had
Deprived.
them. I've been deprived. Thank you. But
Yeah.
that experience to me was just something, just I can't even express in words. It was just that, just connecting with somebody else, playing
This
with
is a
somebody else in
Absolutely. This is a
yeah.
hard thing to describe because this is what happened to me my sophomore year, um, of of high school when I discovered film. I went to a film camp and I had the opportunity. I acted, and then I was the head story writer, and I had never really I'd written scripts before, but they were like play scripts because that was really like the only genre I'd really art form that I'd really known much about. And so I got to write the script and I came up with the story. And it was amazing. Like that I got to do a little bit of directing through that. And so people would go like, so like what does this mean? Like what is that about? And these characters, like you created them, and it was just like I don't know how to describe it. And that's exactly the thing, is like it's similar to like when you fall in love. It's like I don't know how to describe it, you
Right.
know? Like it
It just
just
is.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, with that beautiful note, I have one more question and then we'll kind of close down. And this is a question I really like to ask just various artists, and I think it's a good way to end is what is your advice for young artists, whether it's like young artists specifically for jazz, just artists in general?
Yeah. I mean, I would say communicate,
Mm,
talk to people, get to know people, meet people,
mm,
any opportunity you have, and don't burn bridges.
yes.
Um, you know, you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know
Mhm,
who knows somebody. The art world is very small, and you should always be respectful.
mhm,
Always treat every gig that you do or anything that you do, like, even if it's something that's you might think is below you, treat it like it's the greatest thing you've ever done. um because you never know who you're going to meet, or you never
mhm,
know if that if what the product that you put out, or if you're
mhm.
doing something, you don't know what the you might get more
This may
opportunities
unlock
from that.
more doors than you think it does, and so your perception isn't everything, essentially.
Absolutely, yeah, and
Yeah,
just talk to people, get to know people.
absolutely.
Just any opportunity you can connect with people. And I say that to the students, who get the awards. When you go to the award ceremony, like, talk to other awards winners.
Mhm,
Get to know other people, because it's a good networking opportunity. Networking is
absolutely.
so
Mm.
important, and that's
And
that's
this
what I would say.
and this comes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, where you need to work with other people to produce your story and theirs, because no one achieves anything alone, to quote Leslie Note from Parks and Rec.
Yeah,
Um, and that's just so true, especially in the arts.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. This was super, super interesting and
Thank
super
you.
fun. I feel like we were having conversational jazz going back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so once again, this was pre-recorded, so we didn't get to see any of your comments. But if there's ones which you guys left, we would love to check them out later, and I will send them over to Dan. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend and stay safe. And Dan, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I hope you stay safe.
Thank you. I hope so to you as well.